some of the disadvantages right now is still gender bias. Like we still see that, like certain women feeling like they have to dress certain ways and they're not taken seriously in the boardrooms or whatever that looks like. I think entrepreneurship creates a space where you can literally don't have to be answering to maybe some of those people who, you know, don't feel like women should be in work or X, Y, and Z.
You wouldn't last long.
No,
Your first venture would flop and you're out. Yeah.
We also have to be really real. We all have biases. Whether you're a woman, whether you are a man, whether you are black, whether you're white, you have biases. And so it's really important to acknowledge those, and biases will always come into play. And we need to be looking at not just equality, but equity. Have you ever asked a man that? Going and looking at the data and then marry it with your side around what are you passionate about? What are you good at? What are you positioned to do? Hey, I'm Danielle Canty and welcome to my episode on the Ever Forward Radio.
Miss Danielle, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. I want to fire right away with you because you are really like a tour de force when it comes to, I think, thinking creatively, even spiritually, being entrepreneur-minded, but especially for the females listening right now, I would like to kind of kick things off for them because I'm not one. So I don't want to assume anything here. Do you think women currently have an advantage or disadvantage in the entrepreneur space?
Great question. I think that's I want to answer that two ways because I think it's whether you're a glass half empty or glass half full person too. Like it's all perspective. But if we were to think about the actual, let's say, labeled disadvantages that women have in the entrepreneur space first, let's talk about those. And then we can talk about what are actually the advantages that come out of that.
Okay.
So I think some of the disadvantages right now is still gender bias. Like we still see that, like certain women feeling like they have to dress certain ways and they're not taken seriously in the boardrooms or whatever that looks like. I think entrepreneurship creates a space where you can literally don't have to be answering to maybe some of those people who, you know, don't feel like women should be in work or X, Y, and Z. But there's still, what happens is, unfortunately, the control of capital is still influenced a lot, you know, by the stereotypical males that may not see it. And, you know, we can argue for and against that, but the facts are only 2% or 3% sometimes, well, it got up to 3 and it low, we're back down to 2%, is deployed to women-founded businesses. And so when you see this discrepancy with where the funding is going, it's really hard to argue against. And so I think that, you know, Sarah Blakely told a really classic story when she was trying to raise her Spanx back in the day. She ended up bootstrapping it because she ran into so many challenges. But it was like, yeah, exactly. Silver lining and all and things working out for us. But it was that, hey, I don't know if this is a good company. Let me go and ask my wife. Let me go and ask my daughters, would they buy this? And so if we think about biases, we tend to like what we know. And so, yeah, there's conversations that are going to be, hey, man who's 50, do you want to invest in this period focused company? We have these problems as women. Well, now you're just taking my word for it versus being able to have firsthand experiences. So I think traditionally we've been in this echo chamber of, oh, I see these problems, like, you know, men seeing men, like men seeing the problems that they need to solve in their lives and men controlling a lot of the money. And so therefore it getting filtered down into that way. And now with the change, the advantages right now is that we have change in that we have a lot of women-founded VCs, which are particularly deploying their capital to women founders and people of color, particularly because they've recognized this. And so now the conversations, there are places, there's still a lot less funding available, but there are places that are like, okay, woman, do you want to invest in this company because you know firsthand the challenges that we've had in this space, or women's healthcare, or all these places. So I think traditionally, yes, there have been a lot of challenges. And unfortunately, the statistics show it is still really difficult to raise capital. However, if we look at other aspects, which is, okay, when, you know, I first started in this space, 22% of businesses were founded by women. Now that's at 48%. amazing. So we've got more women inspired to
Doubled
start
in
companies.
Like how long?
That was 2018 now, and that survey was done in 2022. It's gone to 48%.
So it doubled in just a few years. Wow, that's
yes,
incredible.
I like to think Boss Babe had something to do with that.
All right, get it, girl.
So like, we do have this space where, you know, now we're seeing more people that look like us doing more in business. And so that's an advantage. We are having this awareness that's being driven by like, hey, you know what? Investments aren't where they need to be. Capital isn't where they needs to be in women's businesses. And so let's all shine a light on that and let's bring that to the forefront and have that open conversation and try and change that. It doesn't mean it has changed yet. And also that means for a long time, there have been markets that have been like left unexplored because people with power and people with money didn't see the need for that, whereas those now have opened up because, hang on a minute, we've got different people driving different positions and different avenues for the economy that are now allow that to be seen and explored. So I don't like to, I think if you say to yourself as a woman entrepreneur, oh, I'm at a disadvantage, it's going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy and you're going to run into more and more problems. Where if you're like, okay,
like you see problems or you see solutions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like, oh, I see solutions. If I want to raise, let me go to these areas to raise that money. Or hang on a minute, if I notice that this traditionally has been a really underfunded area and I see a gap in that market, let me go after that. And so, you know, I think really, I tend to be a glass half full person. And I think most entrepreneurs do. I think otherwise you would be absolutely crazy to embark on this journey.
You wouldn't last long. No, your first venture would flop and you're out. Yeah.
You have to be optimistic and you have to be willing to pivot. So I don't personally feel like it's an advantage or a disadvantage. I think everyone is in a position where we get to make of it what we get to make of it. And, you know, there will definitely be people who would argue, no, it is a disadvantage. And that's why we haven't been able to do X, Y, and Z. But I just don't like to live my life that way. I'd rather see like, okay, these are all the channels and the possibilities that we do have. So let's make the most of those and let's create even more for the women that follow us. You know, I always say like I have had so many men and women reach their hand towards me and pull me forwards. And so my ethos is like, how can I put my hand behind me and bring another woman forwards with me? So really just kind of taking on that framework is like how we then create change.
And that is why you're here on the show. That is the mentality I look for when I say I'm looking for people that live a life ever forward. That is exactly what I'm talking about. To kind of piggyback off that a little bit, I'm curious, do you feel like a lot of the current disadvantages, or maybe even all of them, dependent upon your mindset, are perceived and not actuality? I know it's hard to say all, right? But
yeah, no, I think there is.
Or where do you think are the most perceived disadvantages versus actual disadvantages for women in the business and entrepreneurship right now?
I think it comes down to, I do think gender bias is a big thing. And I think we also have to be really real. We all have biases. I don't think like, you know, whether you're a woman, whether you are a man, whether you are black, whether you're white, you have biases. And so it's really important to acknowledge those, and biases will always come into play. And we need to be looking at not just equality, but equity, and how we can create changes that acknowledge our biases or acknowledge the disadvantages that certain groups, like I'm sat here as a white woman, like I can't, you know, say I have to acknowledge that I have advantages being white. If I don't, then that's not, you know, doing other communities a credit and it's doing them a disservice. So I think like this whole aspect of just really acknowledging that, yes, there are disadvantages. I think if we say blindly, there's not, then that's kind of, you know, I can say that to myself personally, but I can't speak to I can't speak on behalf of other people. And I think that's something that we have to be really careful about. So I think it's more of a position that you're in. I'm also at a huge advantage because, you know, I moved from the UK to LA. Like this is a completely different climate and economic climate and culturally different to other places and maybe the USA or other places across the world. So I think it's really about understanding that wherever you're from, there is different biases, there are different advantages and there's different disadvantages. And if you have a goal, how can you put yourself in the best position to overcome that? I think is really probably the thing that I would say there.
Share a little personal story with you. Did you by chance see the movie Barbie, the new Barbie movie? So I'm wondering if you can relate. So I went and saw it with my wife, and at the end of the movie, of course, we're talking about it, what we thought. And she told me that she actually cried 3 times during the movie. Mm-hmm. And just as an example of the gender bias and awareness or lack of awareness, kind of throwing myself under the bus here, but it just really made me think about what I'm seeing and what I'm not, where are my biases. I go, why? Like, what do you mean you cried 3 times? It was like a funny movie. And she goes, you just don't know. Like, you of course, you don't see it as a white male, kind of seeing what Barbie's having to go through just for equality and equity, like you're talking about. I couldn't even pinpoint the times in the movie where I'm like, oh my God, that's like a clear male-female bias going on here.
And I think that's like the key to a lot of this is really having, first of all, awareness of your biases. And I really want to be open and be like, biases are not something you can avoid. Like, I'm in a mixed race relationship, so my partner's Black. And so I had biases and he has biases. And it's understanding, we have biases. Mm-hmm. And because if you don't understand that you have a bias and you can't be willing to acknowledge your biases and how they might be harmful, then you can't actually overcome them. And I think that's like the big thing. And if I just ground that in a neutral conversation, right, is if you have a business and you don't know that you have a cost of product problem, you will never fix that cost of product, right? That cost of product could be, it's not actually your sales that are the problem, it's the cost of your product because it's like 90%, right? If you don't look at that data and that data be on paper and completely neutral, you can't argue against the numbers, right? Then if you can't be, first of all, willing to look at the black and white of it and look at what is the data showing us, and then acknowledge your part in that and perhaps go, okay, like I did the best that I could in this period, and now I get to do even better by becoming aware. I think that's where we get into a real challenge and a real problem with not moving, communities forwards when we're too scared to admit that maybe we have done things in the past or said things in the past or believed things in the past that now we understand a fresh perspective. We've realized that they are not correct. And so I think that for me is one of the biggest things that I just want to open up the conversation. Like, I have been blessed to work with such amazing men. And I honestly, I am definitely not here saying like, oh my goodness, men have stopped me getting anywhere. No, they haven't. They've actually really helped me on my way. And there's such a huge place for that. I think more it's about, okay, amazing. And we are still having some of these challenges about where capital is spent or that only 2% of women's business get to 7 figures. Like, why is that? Like, what is happening there that means that is the case? Is it that we're not communicating the change that needs to happen enough? Is it that we have work-life balance issues where we have default parenting and these pieces? And does that mean, how do we feel about paternity pay? Or how do we feel about, X, Y, and Z? And until we start having those conversations really openly, it becomes difficult to create change. And to me, it's really important to, not create a space that's like, oh my God, you did something wrong, because then it's very hard to learn when people are on the defense. Yeah. I'd much rather it be like, oh wow, like totally did not realize that perspective. And now I get to change that and see where I can improve on that. But I think it's really important, just like you, to acknowledge, like I had these biases. Like, I'll have my own biases about other stuff too. Like, I'm not sat here, innocent and being like, I don't have any biases. We all do. And I think that's the biggest thing for everyone to acknowledge, is that we all have biases, and how can we communicate that? And from a business setting, understand the biases, understanding how we communicate better, and then creating goals that work. If you are, let's say, in a business and you're like, okay, how can I, or you are in a community and you might be like, how can I help this? What are my goals here? Where am I spending my capital? Like for me, felt like I wanted to create a change for women's businesses to do better, to have more women's businesses get to 2%? Well, there's to 7 figures, right? So there's a number of ways I can look at that. I can think about, okay, where am I an investor, right? So I invested in a company called Sogal, which favors, actually they only invest in women founders and favors people of color and the BIPOC community. So the LGBTQ plus community, right? And so I wanted to make sure that I was not kind of putting my money where my mouth is. Like money speaks. And so I think your intention and where you spend it is really important. And then like where you shop, like, okay, do I support women-founded businesses? As a woman, am I buying my makeup from big brands that like, let's say L'Oreal own, or am I buying it from like, okay, my friend has a company called Live Tinted, Deepika, like let me go support that. Because if I spend money with her, she can she can be part of that change as well. So just being really more intentional about where we spend our money, I think is also a big step when you're acknowledging this.
Money always talks, right?
Yeah.
Money always talks. Sure. And by spending it or not spending it, we're saying something, we're supporting someone or something or not. And I love what you're talking about there. I think it's a greater through line is by not addressing problems does not mean they don't exist. No. It just means one of two things, I think. We're either choosing to ignore it and hope that it goes away on its own, or we're just not pausing enough or for long enough to actually look at, like you said, look at the data, look at the data in business or just reflect on our life of, okay, this could be something that I'm overlooking. This could be something that I'm assuming. In life and business, it doesn't mean that a problem's not there just because we don't think it exists.
Exactly. And I think most people listening to this entrepreneurs, and I do see one trend with entrepreneurs is we're all learners. We're all like problem solvers and we're all like, okay, well, how can we do better? Like this stat is okay, but let's make it better. And I think, I personally believe that entrepreneurs have the most power to create change. Because most entrepreneurs are not scared of change. Most entrepreneurs are willing to challenge the status quo because guess what? That's how we open up new markets. That's how we create money. That's how we, evolve and change. And so I think if we can start this really an entrepreneurship community is about having this intention. It's much easier for me to have a conversation with you, Chase, about, okay, well, where are you investing? Where are you spending your money? Versus, let's say, some family members back home who don't really understand how, actually spending some dollars with someone actually create any change whatsoever. They're not in this. So I think entrepreneurship and the community of entrepreneurship really gets to then create the change that we want to see.
Yes. So well said. So well said. Kind of keeping this female-focused biz part alive. Do you think women are currently holding other women back? If so, how and why? Like, I don't want you to succeed if I'm not succeeding, or maybe not an abundance mentality.
Can I ask you a question?
Shoot.
Have you ever asked a man that?
Have I ever asked a man, are men holding other men back?
Yeah. I'm just curious.
Probably not.
And
maybe a recent conversation with Adam Lane Smith.
Yeah.
Maybe though. I can't say for sure.
So I think it's the same thing. Like, I think it applies to personalities. I don't think it's a gender.
Is that an example of maybe an unaddressed bias on my end?
Maybe, potentially. But like, I think it's just that it's like, I just think it can happen in anything. I don't think that's a gender piece. Like, I don't think women, I know that I've been met with the most supportive women who only want to see other women rise. And just like, I'm sure you might say that about guys. And then you might get two other people on the chair like, oh, men have always trod my way. They're always jealous about me. You get one other woman, like women hold me back. So I really just think that's like more of a personal, experience.
And perhaps going back to, like we were saying earlier, you're only seeing problems or you're only seeing solutions.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I think that's, the power of what we get to decide for ourselves. There's always going to be, like, come on, like there's always going to be someone who doesn't want you to succeed along the way. Like there's going to be people who we would chat before it started, like a narcissist, or they're jealous, or X, Y, and Z. But that's not gender typical. That's just like personality typical. People like in your life don't want to see you to do well sometimes. And sounds harsh, but it is the reality. And I'm sure every single one of us have experienced people in our lives like that. So I don't think it's a women holding women back. I think it's also the question I wonder for you comes from like that if you think about the age-old corporate where it was like, okay, we're on a board, there's one seat available for a woman. Like there's 9 that already got men at them. There's one seat available for a woman. And there, I think if you asked a corporate woman, there may be a different experience than I've had. I come from an entrepreneur. I've always been an entrepreneur. So I come from a very different background. But I have heard more conversations in that corporate world. And now, as we've seen the data show, well, hang on a minute, when you have women on boards, when you have women co-founders, those businesses tend to do exponentially better than just full male boards. Then actually now that seat might go to 2 seats, or that might go to 3 seats, but it's not 50-50 yet. And so there might be narratives or situations that have arisen there, but I'm sure they still arise. Even though there's 9 seats for men, there's still probably 18 men fighting for those seats. So it's kind of like potato.
What do you think is the unique value, the secret sauce, the energy, maybe even, that comes with filling those seats with more women in the boardrooms of men?
Perspective. I think with everything that's, as a business, if you are unable to have empathy for other people's situations and circumstances, you cannot create the right products, you cannot create the marketing, you cannot speak to the pain points. So, just like that, example earlier on, I just took periods for an example, but it could be anything. Let's say if it's like selling cars. If you've got all men sat on a board where that company sells cars, right? Are they going to come up with the pain points of a woman where it's like, I feel intimidated walking into the, to buy a car. Like, I feel stupid asking these questions. Like, I don't know whether I'm supposed to negotiate or not negotiate.
I'm probably going to be taken advantage of.
Yeah. I remember buying my first car when I moved to the US, and I was just so intimidated walking in, and just like, and if you just have a certain set of perspectives, then you're only going to create, customers from one set of market, because they're the only people. If we think about what it takes for someone to buy, right? You have to know their pain points. You have to know their limiting beliefs. And as you take them through that sales process, you have to get them to have gaining beliefs that are going to support their purchase. And you cannot do that, or you can only do that for one set of customers if you only have people on that board who are that customer.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it takes diversity and different perspectives and different conversations to really help a business thrive. I also think my understanding is there's also been research done, and I don't want to speak too much to this because I cannot remember it like line by line, but about women and their risk tolerance and what that looks like and how that can balance sometimes, and how that can be, like, generally a woman tends to be a little bit less, this is very stereotypical, but tends to be a little bit less risk adverse in some of those conversations than men. And sometimes that actually really helps balance the company, because then they have both perspectives. So I think there's all these different parts of it, but to me, it's not really about, we should have more women on a board. The conversation is we should have a different variety of people on the board with different skill sets, and we should invite different varieties of people to conversations. Like, and this is one thing that really scares me about social media now, is we have algorithms that serve us more of the things that we want to see. So as a society, we are losing being able to go to a conversation and not necessarily agree with that person, and that'd be okay.
We're losing the random potential.
Or that, hang on a minute, they see something different to me. Let me listen, let me learn. Actually, maybe I got that wrong. Okay, cool. Or hang on a minute, no, maybe they were wrong and I've educated them on that. And I think it's just really scary that, we're wanting to see more people agree with us continuously. And now all of a sudden, different perspectives, different ideas have become, a bad thing. I think because of the full extremism that we're having right now in politics too. But, I think there's a place in the middle where actually bringing different ideas to the table and having conversations and figuring out what's best is always going to be a good thing.
I brought this up, I think, once or twice before on the show. This reminds me, have you seen the movie World War Z?
No.
Kind of a older-ish Brad Pitt zombie apocalypse movie.
Oh, yeah. No, that's not for me.
Okay, all right. There's this really unique part in the movie where there's this part of this world, I believe it's Jerusalem, somewhere over the, I think, Middle East, and people hear that there's this area where no one's affected, or infected, I should say. And they go there to figure out why. And what they did was this organization, the government, has this longstanding rule that I think it was 12 people on this board that they decide everything for the country. And if they ever reached a point on any decision where it was unanimous, all 12 people said yes or no, it was a rule. One person was always allocated to do the opposite. So it was, what if we're all so in alignment and we agree to do something, but what if we're all wrong? So what they did was this one guy who thought, okay, we're going to do the opposite, even though he agreed. He created this kind of like sanctuary wall facility, and luckily it worked out because everybody was safe inside. Even though he agreed to do something else, it was a policy to think differently and to act differently.
And I think that's why I said right at the very beginning, and that's where the power of entrepreneurship is, because that's what we do on the daily basis. We're like, okay, so the sales page is converting at this, but could we do better? What else? What other ideas have we got? Yeah. What else could we do to change this? Or hang on a minute, let's see if this product is going to, let's give ourselves this amount to test it, and let's see if that actually helps us create more product fit or adds in another revenue stream to what we're creating. And so I like that perspective of like the ability to always be open to challenge and change, and for good or bad, but either way, then we know, and then we can deviate accordingly.
How do you challenge your own business, your own life, your own systems of this is working, but what if we did this? Do you have like a rule? Do you have is it a timeline, or is it just a team? How do you kind of go about those challenges?
Well, it's really funny because I'm very much like science-based. I always said like you guys don't have this here, but we have A levels. So like 16 to 18. We do these, you pick 4 core subjects. And I picked 2 arts and 2 sciences.
And is this in university?
This is England. Or? No, this is in school. Before you go
school.
You don't go to university or college until like you're 18.
Okay.
And so I picked 2 arts and 2 sciences. And I would say that's exactly how my brain works. I love the creativity, but then I always like to anchor in data. So I think my process is to try anything once within a data limit. So I always call it, let's map out the playground. We can go anywhere in this playground.
I love that.
But what are our limits?
Yeah.
And so first of all, we map that out. Then we have that creative process. Let's say we're launching a product. Like, okay, what do we actually want to achieve from it? What is the pain point that we're trying to overcome? What is the messaging, etc.? What is the price point? What's the profit? All these pieces. Now we get to play within. So we have this period of time to play. We can risk this much money. If it doesn't work, we pull it. If it works, great, we'll double down on it. But we're always anchoring back in to the data. And I see it a little bit like the conversation between masculine and feminine energy. We all have masculine and feminine energy within us. And masculine is like the container, and the feminine is the creativity inside that container. So I see it that way. I think the best businesses are, half driven by data and half driven by gut and creativity. Like you have to have both, because otherwise if you're too data, you never explore, you never go outside the box, you play it too safe. And if you're too creative, you can't actually go back and look at things and go, hang on a minute, those 3 ideas sucked, but this one is smashing it. So what if we double down our whole business onto this one product? We could probably scale this really, really far. And I was actually watching, I don't know if you've read Blitzscaling.
No, not familiar.
So Blitzscaling is a book, I think it's maybe like 5 or 6 years old. And it was based on Reed, who founded LinkedIn. And it spoke about basically if you launch a product that you're proud of, you launch it too late. And the whole concept being that you can't think so much that you're going to know everything the way that the market demands. And so you have to launch something and then listen to the market, which basically means looking at that data. So you have to first follow a gut instinct and a creative instinct around creating this.
Be ready to face criticism too, probably.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is very painful for entrepreneurs.
Definitely. And so you have to launch this product in that creative zone, it not really being polished, it not being like, hang on, I'm going on hunches, I'm seeing this in the market, I think this will work. Launch it and then resort back to the data, be like, hang on a minute, users are using it in this way, let's tweak it. Like if you think about how Instagram started, that's exactly what they did. They thought people were going to use it in one way. It wasn't that way. Or even Airbnb, they had to tweak. They were like, hang on a minute, we thought people would care about this. No, actually it's the professional photos and this bit that's really helping it dive in.
Post-it notes were an accident.
Yeah.
The guy who invented it was trying to make something entirely different, some other paper product.
Exactly. So if you don't look at the data aspect, if you don't have part and part, like I think that's where the problems break down. So for me, that's what I always come to. Like I always have spreadsheets in my business, but I don't look at them every single day. Like I'll go periods where I don't look at them because I know we just need to follow our gut and we need to be like, oh, let's like tweak this. Like we think this is going to work. We think this might be it. Let's test it. Oh yeah, that is or that isn't because the data is telling us. I think if you're not looking at the data in your business and collecting that in a general, in a uniform and a consistent manner, you're doing something really wrong. And like that should be corrected, course corrected now. Yeah. But outside of that, I also don't want every single decision to be made on data because I think it slows you down. And I also think that you stump your creativity.
Mm-hmm. One more question in kind of this female entrepreneurship area of the conversation. Where right now, we're summer 2023 as we're talking here, where right now do you see a niche audience offer, product, service, or unique opportunity to female entrepreneurs right now that you would really advise them to look into, to double down on, or just you personally think it has a lot of potential?
Oh gosh, so many. There's actually so many right now. I think the things are really changing and moving. This is what I would say to anybody, right? So I think the number one question to ask yourself first is actually like, what do you want to achieve? I think really if you have to find, have you heard of an ikigai?
Yes.
Like that concept around like, what do I love doing? Mm-hmm. What am I good at? What can I get paid for? And like, where is growing in the market, right? So if you looked at those four things, I actually think there's always opportunity, but it has to be in the middle of that where those four things overlap. So I think my advice to anyone who is thinking about this is like, what's the next thing that's going to blow up? What is the, progress here? It doesn't really matter. Like AI is literally, taking the world by storm. Am I going to start an AI company? No, because I don't give a shit about that. For me personally, I'm not passionate about it. Like that's not what's going to light me up. But you can
recognize it as a thing and potential, but it's just you also can recognize more about you, which I think is even more important.
So I combine, this is where the arts and the science is. So I do the ikigai and look at those aspects. Then what I do is go to things like Trendalytics or the Trend Hunter. And I will go and look into reports that are collected across, and you'll learn this about me, Chase. I don't like answering questions that I've not done research on in the sense of like, I am not the best, but don't listen to me on like what's going to be like. I'm just like one girl sat in LA. Like, what do I know about half the rest of the world, right? So I'm like, I go hunt these things out. Yeah. Like I literally was on Trend Hunter early on today. Like, okay, what are the changes? Like, okay, like this is what's happening in food and beverages, or this is what's happening in software shitting. We're heading into a recession right now. What companies do well? Like, okay, marketing agencies tend to do well, but these types of companies don't do well. Like, all these different aspects, like I always suggest going and looking the data and then marry it with your side around what are you passionate about? What are you good at? What are you positioned to do? Like, what is your company, if you have a company already, what is it in the best position to do? And I do believe if your company is like charging ahead and you found all those things and you're really happy with growth, amazing. Keep going on that trajectory because you don't want to be steered off. It's better to have blinkers at that point when you've started hitting that growth curve, like go, ride it out. But if you don't and you're like, wait, my company's down on last year or stagnated the last 3 years, then going through this process around, okay, what is this company good at? Like and it could go for you, but it can also go for the company that you're building because assuming by this point you're passionate about your company. like really start cross-referencing those things with what's happening in trends, what's happening in, where the economy is going. We've seen a huge boom in the creator industry. We've seen a huge boom in, like I say, like AI aspects and community aspects. Like if you would ask me one thing, I would say like a trend that I've seen particularly is we used to do a lot of B2B business. So let's say, Joe down the road has a tool shop, right? Or it sells tools online. He would have traditionally done that via Facebook ads or Instagram ads, right? Now those are much more expensive to acquire. So what you might want to be seeing is B2C, which isn't necessarily consumers all the time. It's actually business to community. You want to penetrate, if you have a product-based business, I really think you should be thinking about the power of communities and penetrating other people's communities who already have them built. I think we went through this craze of everyone thinking that they need to be a content creator. And this craze around thinking, hang on a minute, I'm only good in business if I know how to create content. No, that's BS. If you're not good at creating content, don't create content. But guess what? You got to know how to work with content creators. You got to work out how to get, Max over there to recommend Joe's tools so that Joe doesn't need to worry about building his own community, but now he's just getting them. Exactly. So if you're, that is not necessarily a niche, but if I think about generally marketing strategy, and one thing that I'm seeing is like really something for lots of people to think about is how you can penetrate other people's communities and not always feel like, and actually spend ad revenue on emails and ad revenue on, affiliates and ad revenue on that aspect versus always going into Facebook or Instagram, where traditionally over the last year and a half, 2 years, the cost per acquiring a customer has dramatically increased.
Guys, I want you to go back, like rewind, listen to that again. That was just like a mini masterclass. That was so good. And again, it's things that I'm nodding my head and like being so reminded of like, oh, yes. Like we know these to be true. So why are more people not doing this stuff? It's like, it's powerful for a reason.
Yeah, it gets overwhelming. And
sure, yeah.
I think, other thing I would say too, just to add that point is, if you're asking me right at the beginning, like what do I say as niches or industries, sometimes again, just after everything I've said, like, okay, like think about what you're passionate about, see what's marrying with data, marry that up, then think about how you can get that in front of communities. The other thing I would say is don't try and spread your energy too far. Like I think we've also been in this era with lots of, we went from being able to Google something if we needed to find the answer. Let's say 2018, right? 2017. We were Googling, we were like finding out, maybe reading the odd book, right? Then as we got into the creator economy from between 2018 to now everyone is a creator. Everyone knows best. Everyone's trying to sell me something. Everyone's maybe teaching the next best thing or a course or whatever that is. And now I'm like, wait, should I do emails? Should I do SEO? Should I do ads? But I should be doing all of these things. And what happens is a lot of entrepreneurs get stuck in this procrastination loop, or they end up trying to do all these things. But the facts are, you don't have enough hours in the day for you and your team to do all the things.
Yeah, you're lucky if you half-ass all of them.
Yeah. And half-ass is not going to get you. There's a great illustration by Greg McKeown. He wrote the book Essentialism. And if you picture like a sun and like all the rays coming out, if you like try and do all the things, you'll probably get like an inch down on each ray, right? Versus, I hope I'm explaining this without an image, versus if you have that sun and it's like a lightning bolt, that energy goes into one direction, you are going to get like 10 times, 20 times as far, which is going to help you create more customers. It's going to help you add on more revenue. So versus trying to do all the things badly, try and do one, maximum 2 things really well. Double down on that. Go as far as you can with it. Get that plane up in the sky, get the energy, get it on cruise control, then start on your next plane. Like the most energy that it takes to get anything off the ground is like, if you think about plane, it takes the most energy to get it in takeoff, right?
Like,
let's get to cruise control, then
rockets,
we add another one.
They burn what, like 80% of their fuel just to get out of the atmosphere, just to like get off the ground.
But most often entrepreneurs are, have you ever done Enneagram?
A long time ago, yeah.
So Enneagram
I think I'm
is
a
like
7.
The night. Okay,
I think
this has hit my literally. There's like normally entrepreneurs. So guys, if you don't know, the Enneagram is like this, the 9 numbers on like how you show up,
right.
And there's like a peacemaker, I can't remember them all, but the 3 ones that are most common to be entrepreneurs are an achiever, which is number 3. So they are incentivized by hitting goals. The 7, which is the enthusiast. Okay.
Yeah.
So you want to like get in the weeds of everything. It's like, oh my God, there's a new project. Let me get into this, right? Or the challenger, number 8. Like, how dare this be true? I'm going to prove everyone wrong. And so the nature of entrepreneurs is that we like to either go after goals or to face challenges, or we just generally like being enthusiastic about stuff. But the dark side of that is we get distracted easily. And so we get bored easily. And so the biggest killer to being a good entrepreneur isn't actually not trying new things, it's getting bored and losing interest in the things that are actually working. Not going, hang on a minute, I've been doing this business for 5 years now. I'm kind of bored. I want to start a new business. Or hang on a minute, like we've been doing this for a little while. I'm not really seeing traction, but actually you were just at that tipping point of when it's going to start moving. And it's like, you want to just be really mindful around the amazing traits that we all have being entrepreneurs, but also what are our dark sides? Like our dark sides are shiny object syndrome quite often, or losing interest, or any of these things. Or
shadow work. I love it.
Got to be aware of it.
You and I have something in common, I believe. I was listening to an interview with you and Danette May, actually, and I'm also a manifesting generator in human design. So it speaks. These are really cool tests for everybody to run through, I think, but especially if you're a small business owner, entrepreneur, or even just if you think you have an ounce of creativity and a side hustler in you, it can really shine a light on validation for this is kind of how I naturally feel, but also maybe an area to like, double down here or pause over here.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
I love doing personality tests and doing it on people I work with because I think it allows you to know more about yourself.
Oh, yeah.
And the more you know, okay, like this is how I behave in these certain situations, the more you can overcome like the darker side to those things.
Even
too.
just the love languages, having anybody and everybody in your team run through the 5 love languages, it helps you interact so much better, more efficiently. It all comes down to that. I think whether you're a customer or a client or whatever, understanding how you need to give and receive love, you can translate that into the transaction.
And also, I don't know how I remember statistics. Like they just stay in my brain. So a happy employee is 40% more productive than an unhappy employee.
At least.
So if you think about love language aspect, it's not about, anything like woo-woo. It's about, look, people want to feel happy with where they work with. They want to feel inspired. They want to feel like they are working towards something. And if you can't reward that, if you can't reward them in the way that they receive it, like just because you think you saying, oh yeah, you did a great job is you've rewarded them. If they don't receive that, so I'm not part of their love languages and their actual love language is gift, then you might have to send them flowers for them to really go, oh yeah, like I'm really recognized at work and I feel really valued at work. So it's just, self-awareness like we spoke about at the beginning, and then awareness of the people around you. Like, it's really important. One of my partners, like his is like quality time. That's like low on mine. I don't need your time. I just need you to words of affirmation and acts of service. That's what I need. Take the trash out.
There's nothing wrong with that. That's the bitter pill to swallow here when we're talking about this stuff. And I'm laughing because my wife and I went through this years ago, even before we got engaged, and it really solved a lot of problems. Not even that, it showed us where we were making problems unnecessarily. And it really just like in business and in life, just better communication.
Yeah.
Not in just what you say, but how you say it, when you say it, the delivery, the environment, the surrounding, especially in any kind of transaction, a gift, an attaboy, a quality time, love, touch, all that stuff, it matters. But you need to know the person, you need to know the delivery method.
And listen more than you speak. That's been my biggest learning too. Like sometimes with all of us, we can get completely the wrong end of the stick, or we can be so caught up in what we believe is the answer or what we believe is the narrative. And, just like taking this full circle, how we started out this conversation with our biases, recognizing that, listen so you can understand your biases, because they happen at home and they happen outside the home. And so when we understand that, you might even have biases in work. Like, okay, well, I'm paying you this amount. I expect this, this to me is what a good job looks like.
We might even have biases for ourselves. to ourselves.
100%.
Yeah.
Definitely. But like if you're hiring someone and, you're another way to just keep it super neutral is like you might be paying someone, you bring them on to do a certain job and maybe there have been biases that are not in the job description, but you believe because they are at that level or because they're being paid that amount, you're assuming that they should know or do X, Y, and Z. And they're unspoken biases or unspoken tendencies that actually then can break down a working relationship versus being like, hey, let's get on the same page, let's go through job description, but also, what else do we feel is like you doing, how do you feel like you are doing a good job? Like, what do you feel is like you doing a job, succeeding in this role? Okay, it's this, amazing. Oh, actually, can I add in this? This to me is really important that you fulfill on. Okay, great. Yeah, like 9 times out of 10, I'm like, oh yeah, I can do that as well. Amazing. So communication is everything. It really is.
So we kind of already started hitting on it, but I would love to get into, because I know this is a big part of your world as well. I'm just going to call this section of the conversation the woo. Okay. Yeah. Spirituality, your spiritual health, just detaching from the grind, detaching from what your mind and your body are telling you that you need to do, should to do, or what we are telling our minds and bodies we need to do in order to be productive, to be successful, and just separating and just letting our soul speak and listening to our heart. What role does spirituality play in your work in life? How much of an influence is it, I should say, in your business side of things?
Let me just take it back a second because I want to just share a little bit about where I'm from.
Please.
I'm from the middle of the UK. We don't talk about emotions there. No one's doing therapy. It's very American, we would say. Like, who's going to therapy?
Really?
I know, you guys don't see it as American at all. But that's like, I think from like the TV things, But it's like the stiff upper lip. Like you're not speaking about anything. And I also come from, a little village.
You had more sheep than people, right?
Yeah.
I love that.
5 farms in the village.
I can relate. I had more vegetables than I did neighbors in my garden. Yeah.
That sounds more useful than the sheep, though, to be honest. So I came from that aspect, and I would have said I didn't even know the word spirituality. And I remember in 2017, I went on vacation to see my cousin in Dubai. She was living with this girl. They were in their 20s, and someone had given her this book, The Secret.
Ooh, there we go.
And she was like, oh my God, Danielle, I just got a random check through the door. You have to read this book, The Secret. And actually, it wasn't 2017 at all. I'm telling a lie there. It must have been about 2008, 2009. Because I was
17, it was already on the scene.
Yeah. It was like, it was earlier. My days might be slightly off, but I know that I was literally like 20 years old.
Okay.
And when I first heard about this book, and I bought the book and never read it, obviously, because I did that a lot. I hope I buy books and they miraculously go into my head, and I just learn them by them being on my bookshelf. And so it's not my book for years, and I think I actually had gifted it to my auntie. Like I didn't read it at all. Like it lost relevance to me. I was like studying at university, all these things, and again, spirituality was not a conversation. Then I would say spirituality really entered my world when I started on my entrepreneurial journey.
Really?
Because I started having more conversations and people listening to books. And I'm going to put all of these down under the same thing because for me they are. But for other people, they're completely separate. But for me, spirituality is about understanding the power of the mind and understanding the power of one's vibration, like how we think, how like what we emit, and therefore what comes into us, and also the power of relinquishing control to some things. That is what spirituality means to me. And it literally, I think spirituality also holds the pace for it to be, unlike religion, I feel that spirituality can be defined for the individual, is my experience.
Absolutely,
with it.
I'm with you, yeah.
And so for me, that's where my journey really started. And I started listening to books, and you wouldn't say they're spiritual books, but they started opening up to me this possibility. And I listened to like Secret Minds of a Millionaire, right? Which was like...
I think most people would not put that in spirituality.
No, it's not at all. But it's like that
But it opened up your
process
spirituality.
of speaking to yourself. Like in that book, it was like telling yourself like how a millionaire thinks around like abundance, and a millionaire is thinking not in scarcity and all these pieces. Or then like I read another book, which was like The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. Again, not a spiritual book, but it was like, hey, you know, you can look at things in these ways. You can choose to look at it this way, or you could choose to look at it this way. And so for me over the years, it's evolved, but it started out as just being positivity. My spirituality started just being like, oh, let's look at the positive side of things. I didn't come from that world.
That's
I came from a world
refreshing.
of like, you know, like people are against you, rich people are bad, or like, you know, just not darkness, but just not like no light at the end of the tunnel. It was just like life was going to be hard. And I felt like as I entered this personal development space, which I would say then kind of led me more into like the spirituality, and I've understood more of that as that time's gone on, allowed me to really start thinking differently about it. And now I allow my spirituality to evolve to support me. Like I've realized I don't like being confined to a box. Like I don't like being told, oh, you have to think this way, or this way is the right way, this way is the wrong way of me. It's like, how do I create a belief system for myself that works for me, my mission, and those who are close to me?
It's like the true entrepreneur's creed right there.
Yeah.
Put that up on the mission statement.
Yeah. And so that's, you know, now. And so if you asked me, what does my spirituality practice look like now? It's more around how I support my mindsets and how I to keep that glass half full in all those times, and understand like the power of being positive. Like I have literally done, let's see what I've done. I did Joe Dispenza's 6-day workshop, which literally talks about the physics behind like positivity. I've been to numerous conferences along the way. And I've even been to like Hoffman, which actually talks about, you know, your different sides to you, and it talks about a spiritual guide and all these aspects. And so over time, I've evolved it to work for me. Does it mean that I meditate every single day? No, it doesn't. Does it mean that I have mental practices that I do every single day? Yes, it does. Does it mean that when the going gets tough and I feel like I just want to give up, and I'm like, how am I going to get through this? Does it mean that I actually have tools and resources to pull on, which I would class as spirituality? Yes, absolutely. So I think that it's evolves for each and every single individual, and that's how I've set it up to work for me.
When the going gets tough and you're up against a wall, what do you do?
Sometimes cry first. I actually used to have this, like I used to feel so much shame when I would like let out emotion. Like I would just be like, this is weak of me. Like I got brought up, you got sent to your room to cry. Like if you were crying, go to your room, come outside, come downstairs when you're like, okay again. And so I had in my head that that was not a good thing. And I did some therapy back in 2020. Yeah, 2020. And she was like, no, crying is just energy, emotion, like that's all it is. And so you have to go through that process. So I really allowed myself to like let it out, because I feel like if I can't let it out, I can't actually address the problem. So going back to the whole, like I cannot actually address my own problem if I don't acknowledge first of all my problem. So I would say normally like a cry or feeling sorry for myself, but like that literally cannot go beyond a day. Like you just cannot keep staying in that motion because it's not good for you. And then it goes down to, okay, well, what is it that I want to achieve? Like how do I, if I think about my why, if I think about where I want to go and relinquish the how, let's like recalibrate into that vision again. I'm a huge believer in having visions, and then once you have a vision, you see opportunity differently. And I don't think that's spirituality. I just think that's what happens with your brain.
Am I hearing you correctly? Are you saying having a vision or creating our own vision?
No, if you have a vision, you see opportunities and paths to get there more easily. Okay. So if you don't have a vision.
So not visualizing, but like I had a vision. This idea in my head kind of thing.
No, visualizing that. Okay,
visualizing. Okay.
So I would say, let's say, for example, we're talking about going gets tough, right? So if I'm like, right, let's just take a random business example. So I'm like, okay, I need to make $1 million in the next 2 months. Like I have to do this, like payroll's counting on it, all these things, right? I'm going to make $1 million in the next 2 months. My back's up against the wall. I feel stressed about it. I don't know how to do it. Yada, 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 yada. Okay, cool. I'm going to have a little cry fest first. I'm going to get my emotion down, or I'm going to, whatever I need to do to be like, okay, why am I upset? Then I'm like, what is the problem? But where do I want to go? So what does that million look like? How am I going to do that? What are the ways that I could possibly do that? Brainstorming that. Then what tends to happen is when you have a visualization around like, this is where I'm going, it's much easier for the brain to start seeing paths of how to get there. If you don't know that you need to or want to make that $1 million in that next 2 months, the chances are you're probably not going to make it unless you already have a system in place for it anyway, right? So science has proven that we are 30% more likely to achieve a goal if we write it down. Even just by writing it down and setting the intention, like I'm doing this, get everyone rowing in the boat, data shows that you're more likely to hit it. So really just kind of going, okay, well, what does that look like? Then allowing myself to see opportunities to get there. I then start systemizing it.
That's one. Yes. I echo that a million percent. That's one of the biggest shifts that I've noticed in doing that. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I equate it also, if you're setting out in your car, we're in LA now. If we don't decide we want to go to New York, we're probably not going to end up in New York. We're not going to get there. Whereas if we decide to go to New York, okay, cool, we don't know the route, but guess what? We know that we're on the West Coast and we need to head to the East Coast. So chances are if we keep heading east, we're going to get there eventually, right? Let's keep coming back to east.
Technically, she's not wrong, everybody.
Wow. Don't question me on my American geography, but the north and south ratio of that, I'm not quite sure. But, and I think it's just really, really grounding and really rooting into some deep principles around, this. I really believe that things happen for me and not to me. I genuinely believe that everything that happens is not a setback, it's a learning. And that I'm always on the right path. Like, I don't feel like I'm ever not on the right path. Like I'm always, whether it's a deviation or not, it doesn't matter sometimes if I head south by accident. Like I know I'm always going to find my way.
You're always
exactly, and I think
where
spirituality has allowed me to have peace in that. Like, oh, I know it's going to be fine. This is going to figure itself out. And if it doesn't figure itself out, I'll figure it out. I'll give it a little chance to figure itself out. If not, I'll get my A-type personality hat back on and then,
the universe is taking its sweet ass time. I'll just step in. We'll do some stuff. Yeah, exactly. We'll get to work.
But I think, everyone has, and we mentioned Danette earlier. She's one of my close friends and she has a completely different level of spirituality. She'll talk about, downloads and stuff like that. I don't get downloads. I get gut feelings. And I've really also had to start understanding hey, what's my gut on this? And, but for me, the beauty of it is that spirituality isn't a box. And it's actually you get to define what being spiritual means to you. My boyfriend will have a completely different label around what spirituality means for him. And that's fine.
I kind of think that's the point, right?
Yeah. I'm just I think it's about being positive.
Speaking of listening to your gut, you are going through some business changes right now. And just in getting to know you a little bit more over the last few months, as this has kind of come about and now, seeing it go public and everything, I know that this is a decision that you absolutely did not take lightly. Yeah. And I know that this is something that you didn't choose it, you acknowledged it. It was already there. It was, this was pulling you as much as it was, my words, not yours, as much as it was the pull to create it. Yeah. Walk us through why you have such clarity in leaving Boss Babe.
I really believe, so for those who don't know, Boss Babe was founded, there was two of us, me and Natalie.
Right. And so, excuse me, I haven't really addressed that yet. For people who don't know you.
Good. That's what I'm here for. I can address that. So I founded it in 2018 with my business partner at the time, Natalie. And at that time in our lives, we had very similar visions. We were both
There's that V word again, everybody.
Yeah. And we had visions for our lives that were similar, and we had visions for the company that were similar. We were both married at the time. Neither of us had kids, etc. So we had a lot of, when you're talking, actually, we were talking about earlier around polarity and different like diversity in a relationship. Natalie and I never had that much diversity in our relationship. We were very similar in the sense that we were different people,
right?
But we're both from the UK. She lived in America. I then moved to America. A
lot of overlap.
Yeah, a lot of overlap, which made it really easy for us to grow that business very quickly because we saw exactly the same thing. But then fast forward to more like 2022, 2023, we just started having different life experiences and things, different visions for the company, different ways that we wanted to have a vision for the company, where we felt like it should go. And then also a different vision for, our personal lives. And so for me, we've never been shy in sharing this, like, for me, I really felt like Boss Babe should be a brand for the people, like for the women. And I didn't want it to be a personal brand. And Natalie saw things a little bit differently, and that's cool and that's fine. And so I was like, and also we'd had different experiences. She went on to have a child. I went on to have a divorce. Various
some big life changes there. Yeah, absolutely.
She moved to Texas. I stayed in LA. And it just became like, you can't have two different visions for the same company. And so one thing I've always been really, really clear on is that change is okay. I think lots of people get really, really stuck in this whole thing with, oh my goodness, I can't possibly change something. But I think that's the beauty of life. We get to create changes. And I see my life as a book. It's not one long chapter, it's multiple chapters. Goodness knows, I must be on maybe I'm on chapter, how old am I right now? 34. Maybe I'm on chapter 34 right now. I don't know. Or maybe I'm just on chapter 20 and maybe sometimes years blend into each other. Well, maybe I'm on chapter 64. I don't know. But the point is, we have chapters that end. Maybe, hey, we have volumes to books. We have a trilogy.
A chapter ending is not the end to your story. It's not the end to your book. No.
Exactly. But I do think it's really important that we give ourselves permission to see, you know what, like this isn't in the best interest of the company anymore. Like we always treated Boss Babe like our baby, like that was our baby together. And
of course,
how can we bring up the baby and how can we send the baby on the best way possible? And we just decided, you know what, like it's different. It's time for it to take a different path. And one of us just to be at the helm of that. And, I was fortunate enough, there's lots of other ideas and lots of other things I've been working on. Like I'm building a community product right now called Member Up with some people I met via Boss Babe. Like there's lots of other aspects. I'm also really, really passionate about doing more with women entrepreneurs and helping more businesses. And I have a newsletter that I started, the 2%, which is because like I said, only 2% of women's businesses are getting 7 figures. Like how I could really accomplish that by giving lots of free marketing advice and these aspects. And so for me, I was just like, you know what? This is an amazing journey, the best chapter ever. And it's okay that it now gets to close and it goes on to its next chapter and I get to go on to my next chapter. So how exciting that is. And, I always think about, did you have the yellow pages here?
The phone book?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I always think yellow pages is a great example of a business not evolving with the times.
Absolutely. Do they still make them?
No, because who needs it?
Right,
they transferred to Yelp, but I felt like it was so late in the game. They were trying to keep Yellow Pages alive for so long. And I think that it's just really important to acknowledge that times change, you change. And when we look at the Ikigai, I was like, hey, is this really aligning with where I'm at right now? Is this really aligning with what I'm seeing happening with the market right now? Yada, 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 all these pieces. And getting to make that decision with confidence that you get to take all the learnings. The one thing I will say too is we didn't share this part, but lots you guys won't know, but I was actually a chiropractor and then went into online education.
It's Dr. Danielle, everybody.
Yeah, but you could have said, hey, what does a chiropractor know about building an online company, right? But there's always transferable skills. There's always hang on a minute. I had really, really good, because I had such huge empathy and I was used to understanding people's pain points. That really helped me transfer it into team. That really helped me transfer it into marketing. I was managing clinics that helped me transfer over. I was good at P&Ls, all these different aspects. And so just for anyone listening, if you're feeling like a change is going to be right for you, if you're feeling like a change is on the horizon, don't shy away from that. I don't think it's something that should be oh my goodness, I might need to change this. I spoke to someone in my mastermind the other day. She came on crying and she was like, Danielle, I feel like I've built this business and I don't like it. And I'm like, that's okay. We'll get to change it. She was
That's
like,
okay.
Yeah. She was like, oh my God, I think I need to like burn it to the ground, essentially. I was like, no, we just need to tweak some of your products. And then we just set up a plan and show like, keep growing it this year.
Oh, amazing.
Like we catastrophize things so much in our brains sometimes versus being like, you know what? Okay, this is the chips we're out. How can we like work them into the best hand possible? And let's go again. Let's roll the dice again. So it's just, you have so many skill sets that you get to take with you and it's exciting. And you can tell I probably have some 7 in me. So I'm like, okay, cool.
I want to ask you, what comes to mind as maybe the most transferable skill you're taking with you from this previous engagement to whatever you're doing next?
I think my biggest, you know what? I have found this so hard to ever acknowledge myself for things that I'm good at. Like, I just find it so uncomfortable. I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to seem like I'm bragging. But I've also realized it's really important because when you tell people what you're good at, you can also tell them what you're not good at. Like, I should do a dyslexic test because I can like hardly spell at all. I really need to take the test. And like, there's so many things that I'm really not good at. But one of the things I'm really, really good at is I think my naturally being an empath, I really understand people. And so that means I'm a really great leader in building teams.
That's a superpower.
And I'm really good at marketing because I understand messaging. Like I understand what people need to, the transformation people need to go through to buy. And I'm not an emotional buyer, I'm a logical buyer. So it also helps me like, oh, hang on a minute, we've not hit all these logical aspects that someone would need to go to. So now I relate that back to my chiropractic. Like I had all those skill sets then. I just didn't know how they transitioned and how to articulate them into initially other aspects. So for me, those are pieces. And that's why the software I'm working on is called Member Up. And that is a community-based software because I really feel like we got so big with social media that we actually created more distance between people. And now people are like, where are my core people? Like, where are people that are like me and having similar problems? So whether it's a, community on tools or a community on finances or a community on like, I don't know, whatever that is, fishing. There's all kinds of communities out there. Like you can build them off the back of everything because people want to find people who have like-minded interests. And then for marketing, I think as an entrepreneur, the biggest gift you can give yourself is to understand marketing because then you always are able to control your revenue. You're always able to contribute, even if you're not great at every single bit of marketing. It doesn't mean you have to be a whiz at social media or a whiz at ads or a whiz at copy, but you have to understand what is good copy. What is the formula that creates a good advertisement? I have to understand my ROAS. I have to understand my CPA or hang on a minute, like what is a funnel? Like what is the best practices in a funnel? You don't need to be able to build the funnel. You don't need to be able to write the funnel, but you have to understand all the skeletons which go into every aspect of marketing. And I think if you can invest time in doing that, it's really, really powerful. And that's why I created my newsletter because I was like, it took me so long to learn all that stuff. And there was so much like bad advice there. I was like, oh my God, let me just save people time. I just put it into a newsletter each week on like what's working and what's not in the marketplace. So
what a hero. What a hero. Thank you for that. Knowing that this venture would end, would you go back 5 years and still start it anyway?
Oh my God, hell yes. Are you kidding me? I have one rule in my life and I don't have regrets. I would do not, I have like, there's no point because if I didn't start that, there's no way I would be here. I would not be living in LA. Well, I don't know how I would be living in LA. I don't know how. Like, I mean, I would have gone onto another path, but no, I love every single good thing that's happened. I love every single bad thing that's happened because it's shaped me and it's allowed me to learn. Like people ask me like, you know, I have a new partner now, but like, oh, would you have still got married? Yeah, I would have got married. Like my first husband taught me so many things, like so many lessons. And I would not have gone on to create or do some of the things that I would have done if I hadn't have met him and gone on that journey. So I see that in like relationships that you have, or even if they've been toxic or even if they've been good, they're still learnings, they're character building for you. But the biggest thing you can do is like learn from them. Like that is the biggest gift that you can have is if you do feel like you've made any mistakes, what are you not going to do again? And I can hand on my heart tell you, like, one of the mistakes I made in my first marriage was not being a good communicator with him. I didn't tell him. I felt like I was being a better wife by not complaining or not saying how I truly felt about something. Wow. And so I buried a lot of my own feelings to keep the peace because I thought that, like, you know, arguing it was a bad thing. Yeah. And that actually turned out not to be the right thing because it just meant that once I was done and beyond repair because it had gone too far for me. Do you know what I mean? Like I'd swept it under the rug for too long that then I couldn't go back from it. Yeah. Versus if we'd spoken about it, like, you know, I don't think we were the right match for either or anyway, but what I'm trying to say is, like, I won't make that mistake again. Now, every single morning, Darius and I, we have a whiteboard on our fridge and we write our numbers down. Like, how are you feeling? We have 0 to 10. 10's like on top of the world. 0 is like feeling terrible.
Leave me alone.
And yeah. And
I need some extra love.
Yeah. And it's like, you know, if he has a 5 on the board and I'm at an 8, I know it's my job to hold space for him and to make sure, like, he's okay that day. And say to him, hey, like, are you, like, what, you know, is there anything that I can do that helps bring you up from a 5?
Yeah.
And being open and communicating that and saying, like, hey, this actually upsets me. When you do this thing, I perceive it in this way. I'm sure you don't mean it in this way, but this is how I receive it. And likewise. So I think the biggest thing that I've learned is over communicating now. I think for a long time, I would always put other people's emotions before mine. But I don't think that has been, hasn't set me up for then long-standing relationships and just being more open when I'm not happy or when I am upset. That's what I've taken through with me in this next relationship.
All right. Beautifully said. Thank you for sharing that. Hypothetically speaking, let's say in another 5 years, what your next venture, it's going to come time to move on from that. Speak now to 5 years in the future, Danielle. What are you most hopeful for her walking away from this next experience with?
Oh, good question. I don't know if it'll be 5 years. It might be a decade, let's say. But for me, what's really on my heart is I want to think about, my goal is to try and leave the world a better place than I found it. And building a business is about creating positive change for me. So the next business I'm building, I really want it to be have a really strong philanthropic side to it right from the get-go and build that into it. I didn't do that with Boss Babe, and we would do charity stuff and give away stuff. And I think generally the impact of Boss Babe was really, really strong. And we like mentioned some of the statistics that we changed. But this time I wanted to be a little bit more calculated in doing that from the get-go. Like, what are things I'm passionate about in business?
More intentional from the start.
Yeah, more intentional. Like, what are other things that I want to see a change in society, and how can I be part of that change is really important for me. And then another aspect is I want to build business. I see. I think I'm going to end up building multiple businesses at this point. I have a way I'm going to be doing it.
Coming to terms with reality.
Yeah, it's all going to be under one. There's going to be a few things going on. I got some things in the works, but really everything that I do is coming back to, am I leaving the place better than I found it? And do I feel like this business is actually for like good? Do I think like, hang on a minute? And unfortunately, up until this point, everything they've done is that way. But to me, it's really important to have a moral compass. Like I'm actually not driven by material things. Like I don't have fancy watches, fancy jewelry. Like the thing that drives me is like a nice home is probably my material thing, and then peace. Like I really had to. I was thinking about what business I'm going to be doing, and had some huge ideas. And I'm like, okay, these ones could be amazing, but they'll need to be venture backed. And I'm like, is venture backed the life that I want? Does that feel like that will bring me peace?
It's your baby, but still having to kind of
answer to someone else people, or actually report on figures that and then make decisions for the business based on finances versus what I think is best for the business in my heart and my gut and where I think we're going. And I'm like, that's not actually the life that I want. And so anyone that's listening, I think it's really, really important to understand when you're building businesses, what are sacrifices that you're willing to make. I would rather sacrifice money than my decision-making power in those situations. Like I'm really clear on that. And when you understand that, it becomes a lot easier to decide what those next avenues are. So for now, I'm doing Member Up and my newsletter, which is free, but I'm just doing it too.
Well, let's make sure to share with everybody here.
Share that.
Yeah.
And then the other things, those 2024, you'll start seeing
those. All right. I also know this about you, and you talked about, community being very important for you in terms of for you, but also in the work that you do.
Yeah.
I also know that your community, I'll say your tribe of mentors is very important for you because, I see you out there. I see you with the people at your level, supporting other people in your space. I see you being a mentor and teacher to other people, and I see you keeping mentees in your life. How do you navigate which type of mentors to keep in your life? How do you know when this is a connection that you have that, yes, I can learn from them. Yes, I can teach them. Yes, I need this tribe kind of like right here at my level to serve me where I'm at.
I think picking mentors, I always say one thing whenever you're picking mentors. Mentors are amazing, but don't give your power away to mentors.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah.
Because, and I say this to people in my mastermind who hire me to be their mentors. I'm like, you know your business better than you, right? I am going to give you advice on what I see, but don't take that as gospel. Feel free to argue that back to me. And like, let's have that discussion point around what you're seeing that I'm not seeing, X, Y, and Z. But don't give your power away. Don't think that someone ever knows your business better than you do.
Or else just go get a job again and have a boss say yes or no.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest mistake that I see people make. I would also say I would have never choose mentors who have not been where you want to go. So they have to have had like a really similar business to you, I think is really important as you're taking advice from people who you might be taking the wrong advice. And then thirdly, this is one I don't think gets spoken about, is do they have the same moral compass as you? Do they have the same value system as you? So I just shared, for me, like money is not the be all and end all. Like I literally came from literally a village. Like I've far surpassed any of my financial aspirations that I ever had. And I don't want to lose faith of that. I don't want to compromise who I am as a person. I don't want to do business at the cost of my reputation or my, my parents didn't bring me up particularly religious, but they taught me to treat people how I'd want to be treated. And I don't want to ever compromise that. I don't want to be around people who compromise that. And I don't want to be put in positions that compromise that. So make sure you pick mentors who are also aligned with that. They're not either suggesting that you do things that you're not morally happy with. At the end of the day, you have to live with your decisions, and you want people around you who are supportive of those things. I think when you start getting mentors that are very, very, very money hungry and all they see is like, there's so much more to life. Like, I want to be happy on this journey. I'm not happy because let me tell you now, if you say, oh my God, I'm going to be happy when I sell my business for $10 million, guess what? You might sell your business for $10 million and you'll be like, I'll probably be happy when I sell my next one for 100.
I'll be happy when is one of the worst lines we can put into our minds. Yeah.
So I think it's like, don't lose sight of where you started. And I think sometimes as you kind of make your way up that totem pole, it becomes, you forget to look back at how far you've come and be in gratitude for that. And I think that's just really important to acknowledge and to live your life that way. And then I honestly, I know so many people that I'm very fortunate. I know so many people who are extremely wealthy. I know some people who really are not wealthy at all. And there really isn't actually that much, like the wealthy people are not even the happy people most of the time. So I'm not saying that like, don't chase it or anything. Like, sure, like I have my own aspirations and I want to be doing these things, but I am very clear on what I will and will not compromise on. And for me, and so when you're looking for a mentor, I think this is something that I hadn't really thought about until, as I've gone on my journey, I've seen like different sides to people. I'm like, I'm like,
a little bit more of this, less of that. And you kind of just make it your own. Right?
Or I'm just like, I'm surprised that that's what was like, what was actually at the root of who they are. So I think it's just being mindful of that and taking advice from people that you feel are really aligned with you. But I think mentors are great, and I definitely think it's a shortcut. And I think it's cool to move around mentors and get different perspectives. And have advisors in your business or however you want to do it, or pay for mentorship or whatever that looks like. But also never give away the power to your business. And what I mean is the decision power.
All right, so here's our chance for you to be our direct mentor. I want to bring it home to the final question. And you embodied it. I even mentioned in the beginning of the show, kind of my vetting process for the show, is people that are really, mentors in a way in my life, from a distance, from getting to know them, from their books, from social media, from a lot of different ways. But really, I'm looking for people that do what they say and have this little way of, all right, you know what? This shit might suck right now, but there's a way through it, and I'm going to figure it out to move forward, to keep moving ever forward. So to kind of bring it home, when you hear those two words, Danielle, how do you live a life ever forward? What does that mean to you?
Oh, okay. I would say no regrets ever, because that means you're looking back. So I'd say I have no regrets on anything I've ever done. Only learning. So you only learn from stuff. And I would say glass half full, or another way of saying that is always see the positive. Like I always choose to see there is positivity in this. Always. Like we're surrounded by so much love and positivity. And then actually that's just reminding me of the one thing. We have a rule at home. It's just like lead with love. Like everything you do, lead with love.
Yes.
If someone is behaving in a way you can't understand, lean into love and try and understand from an empathetic way. Or, if things aren't going your way, like come back to like love. Joe Dispenza talks about love being the highest vibration possible and just coming back to that. So I would say those things.
Never a right or wrong answer. I appreciate your interpretation. This has been so great. Thank you so much for making time for me and the Everforward Radio audience. Can't wait to see what you do next. I know it's going to be amazing. And I know that because you're a very heart-centered person and you're leaning into a pull. This isn't just another whim, another grasping at a straw. That's just not how you operate. And that's not how you keep success and happiness in your life. And more importantly, that's not how you help others achieve the same thing. So you can't go wrong.
Well, I appreciate you. And thank you for having me on here today.
My pleasure. Where can they go to connect with you more, to learn more about what you got going on? Of course, we'll have everything linked for everybody down in the show notes. But is there like a website, social media?
I'm most active on Instagram. So just Danielle Canty. So you can find me there. Always drop me DMs. I don't have anyone doing my DMs at all. So it's me. So message me. I read every single one of them.
Real life human being on the other side.
Exactly. And then I would say my newsletter, which is Danielle canty.com/newsletter. You can also get it from my bio on Instagram. But that's where I share the 2%. That goes out like every Tuesday. Just all marketing advice. No fluff, no BS. I just give pure content.
Amazing.
Just like my labor of love right now.
All right. Well, we'll make sure to plug all that. You guys definitely want to connect with Danielle and what she has to offer. Wealth of information. And just good vibes, too. Good vibes. Great energy.
Likewise.
So thank you. Yeah.
Thanks for spending this time with me. I've enjoyed
My pleasure. My pleasure.